One of the biggest mistakes people make when learning English, and probably one of the most common misconceptions, is thinking they need to study English. But I say, don't study English, live English. Now, let me explain what I mean. What does studying really mean? How do people usually approach this process? Studying typically involves gaining knowledge about something by reading, examining, or researching it in detail. We often perceive studying as hard and boring, something that can be completed and left behind, like a school course. When you study in school, you can't wait to finish it and forget about it. Similarly, many people believe that if they take an English course or work with a teacher one-on-one, they will learn English, and once the course is over, they won't need to study it again. But that's completely wrong. To be fair, everyone has different goals. If your only goal is to pass an exam like IELTS, then yes, you study for the test, pass it, and then move on. That's why it's important to determine your goal. Are you learning English just to pass an exam? Do you learn it for fun, or do you seriously want to become fluent? Do you need it for work, or do you plan to move to an English-speaking country? Many people only study English for exams, get their desired score, and then stop. That's their goal, and it's completely fine. However, if you really want to be fluent, you can't just stop once you reach a certain level. If you quit practicing, your skills will decline. Of course, you can take short breaks, and a month without speaking English won't hurt much. But if you ignore English for a year or more, you'll likely lose some vocabulary and need to retrain certain skills, especially speaking. That's why I believe in living English rather than just studying it. What do I mean by living English? You need to surround yourself with English so much that it becomes a natural part of your daily life. You need to incorporate it into your routine so deeply that it doesn't even feel like learning anymore. Underscore 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 underscore. This version keeps the message clear and engaging. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. Smiling face with smiling eyes. English should no longer feel like something you have to study. Instead, it should become a natural part of your daily routine. When you immerse yourself in the language, you won't forget it or lose your skills. In fact, you will continue to improve every day, little by little, without even realizing it. One day, someone will compliment your English, and you'll be surprised, wondering how it happened so effortlessly. That's the beauty of living the language. You improve naturally. While it may be challenging at first, requiring effort and discipline, the rewards are well worth it. You cannot simply stop learning and using a language and expect to maintain the same level of fluency. As the saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. Just like any other skill, language needs to be maintained. Consider people who finish college. They may be eager to complete their studies, but they then apply their knowledge in their jobs, which helps them maintain and enhance their skills. The same applies to English. If you take a long break, you may not forget everything completely, but your skills will weaken. Whether it's playing an instrument or driving a car, a lack of practice leads to a decline in ability. This is why many people find themselves in a cycle of learning English but never truly achieving fluency. For many, becoming fluent in English is a major goal, but the path they choose often does not lead them there. The key is not just in the method but in the mindset. Take my family, for example. We live in Ukraine, where it is rare to encounter a tourist who speaks English, and finding someone to practice with is extremely difficult. While English courses and speaking clubs are available, they are not free, and not everyone has access to them. Instead of relying solely on traditional learning methods, my family has created an environment where English is a natural part of our daily lives. We watch and listen to everything in English. I use English for my Instagram, writing posts and sharing stories in English. Our 2 YouTube channels are in English. I read in English. By surrounding ourselves with the language, we are not just learning it, we are living it. My English journey. I have surrounded myself with English in every possible way. I speak English with my husband and son because we are raising our son to be bilingual. However, my journey started long before that. I took lessons on Cambly, worked with an accent coach, completed an accent course, and participated in English study groups and speaking clubs. Through these experiences, I made many friends, including native speakers, with whom I could practice. If you are interested, I talk about this in more detail in my video, How I Became Fluent in English. The truth is, even if you live in a country where no one speaks English and you don't have a practice partner, you can still live in English. Over time, it becomes such a natural part of your life that you wonder why you didn't start earlier. My husband is a great example of this. He never actively set out to learn English or become fluent, yet he didn't mind when I asked him to create 2 channels in English, watch everything in English, and occasionally speak it. He never studied vocabulary or practiced deliberately. Instead, he simply asked me about things he was curious about, and over time, his English improved significantly. Now, he speaks at a fairly good level for someone who acquired it passively. I have also created videos where I share tips on improving your speaking skills independently, finding speaking partners, and learning English online. You'll find the links in the description. But the most important thing I want to emphasize is that you must learn to enjoy the process. Have fun with learning, speaking, and practicing English in your own way. If it feels like a burden, you won't stick with it. That's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, give it a like, share it with your friends, and watch it over and over again, 10 times in a row if you'd like. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep learning and improving. If you are someone who wants to speak English fluently, confidently, and naturally, this lesson is for you. Today, I will teach you how to think in English, which is one of the most important steps toward fluency. We all know how frustrating it can be when we have to stop and translate sentences from our native language into English before speaking. It slows us down, makes us feel less confident, and often hinders our ability to communicate naturally. It would be amazing if you could skip the translation process and start thinking in English directly. The good news is that it's possible. By following 4 simple stages, you can train your brain to think directly in English, which will make a huge difference in how you speak. Before we begin, Don't forget to subscribe to Bookish English if you haven't already. This way, you won't miss any of our lessons designed to help you on your journey to fluency. Now, let's get into today's lesson, how to think in English. Stage 1. Think in verbs, the power of action words. The first stage of learning to think in English is to focus on verbs. Verbs are action words that describe what's happening. But why do we start with verbs? Because action is happening all around us. If we can identify actions in English, we can begin forming sentences in our heads more quickly. For example, imagine you are walking through New York City, specifically in Central Park. You see people everywhere engaged in different activities. What are they doing? Some people are running, others are talking, a dog is chasing a ball, and someone is feeding pigeons. These actions are all described using verbs: run, talk, chase, feed. By observing what's happening around you and identifying actions in English, you start training your brain to think in the language. You can do this exercise anywhere. If you are standing at a bus stop in London, waiting at a traffic light, or sitting in a cafe in Paris, there are always actions happening around you. On a busy street in Tokyo, you might see people walking quickly, someone riding a bicycle, or a group of friends laughing. You can mentally note these actions in English: walk, ride, laugh. But what if you are at home and there's not much going on? You can still practice thinking in verbs by imagining scenarios or using pictures. For example, look at a photo of a family picnic. What actions do you see? Maybe they are eating, playing, or relaxing. Even when indoors, you can practice identifying actions by thinking about what you might do in different situations. Imagine yourself in various scenarios and mentally describe them in English. This simple habit will help you build a strong foundation for thinking in English naturally. Even in your kitchen, you can practice thinking in English by identifying actions such as cooking, cleaning, or washing dishes. A helpful practice tip is to set aside 5 to 10 minutes each day to focus on thinking in verbs. Pick a different place each day and concentrate on the actions happening around you. By doing this regularly, you'll train your brain to think about actions in English, making it easier to describe what's happening in the moment. Stage 2. Think in nouns, naming the world around you. Once you've practiced thinking in verbs, it's time to move on to nouns. Nouns are words that name people, places, things, or ideas. Just like verbs, nouns are everywhere. Everything around you has a name. If you can start identifying these names in English, you'll be one step closer to thinking and speaking fluently. For example, imagine you are in Sydney, Australia, standing by the famous Sydney Opera House. As you look around, you see the building, the harbour, and many tourists taking photos. You also notice a boat in the water and a few seagulls flying above. Each of these words, building, harbour, tourists, boat, and seagulls, are nouns. It's important to practice thinking in nouns wherever you are. If you are at a market in Delhi, India, you might see fruits, vegetables, spices, and vendors. These are all nouns describing the objects and people around you. Even if you are just sitting in your room, you can look around and identify nouns, perhaps a table, a chair, a book, or a laptop. Another great way to practice thinking in nouns is to describe what you are carrying with you. What's in your bag? Maybe you have a phone, some keys, and a wallet. If you get into the habit of naming these objects in English, it will soon become second nature. Over time, this simple practice will help you think faster and more clearly in English. Key practice tip: spend a few minutes each day naming the objects around you in English. Whether you are outside, at home, or even traveling, challenge yourself to identify everything in English. For example, if you are visiting Barcelona, Spain, look around and name things like buildings, bicycles, cafes, and tourists. The more you practice this, the easier it will become to think and speak naturally in English. The more you practice, the more your brain will automatically start thinking in English. Stage 3. Think in sentences connecting verbs and nouns. Once you are comfortable thinking in verbs and nouns, it's time to move on to the next step, thinking in sentences. This stage involves putting verbs and nouns together to describe what's happening around you in full sentences. At this stage, it's important to start simple. Don't worry about making long, complicated sentences, just focus on creating short, clear sentences that describe what you see. For example, if you are in Cape Town, South Africa, looking at Table Mountain, you might say, the tourists are climbing the mountain. The sun is shining. The wind is blowing. These are simple sentences, but they allow you to practice thinking in complete thoughts. Now, let's imagine you are in Toronto, Canada, sitting in a park. What's happening around you? You could describe the scene like this: a family is having a picnic. The children are playing with a ball. The birds are flying in the sky. These sentences are short but effectively describe what's happening. As you become more comfortable, you can start making your sentences longer. For example, if you are in Berlin, Germany, walking near the Brandenburg Gate, you might say, a group of tourists is taking pictures of the monument. Some of them are listening to their tour guide, while others are checking their maps. This sentence combines multiple verbs and nouns, giving a fuller description of the scene. The goal here is to get used to thinking in sentences instead of just individual words. This practice will help you speak more naturally because your brain will automatically form sentences in English without pausing to think about each word. Key practice tip: every day, take 10 to 15 minutes to describe your surroundings in sentences. Whether you are at home, in the office, or walking through a new city, challenge yourself to think in English and narrate what you see. Over time, this will become second nature, making it easier to express yourself fluently in conversations. To form complete sentences in your head that describe what is happening, try observing and narrating your surroundings. For example, if you are in a cafe in Rome, Italy, you might say, the waiter is serving coffee. Two friends are chatting at the next table. A couple is reading a menu. This simple practice will make thinking in English feel much more natural. Stage 4. Think in paragraphs, bringing it all together. The final stage is to move from thinking in sentences to thinking in paragraphs. This means describing everything around you in more detail, telling a full story, or creating a vivid picture of the scene in your mind. Imagine you are visiting the Great Wall of China. Here's how you might describe it in a paragraph. I'm standing on the Great Wall, and the view is incredible. The mountains stretch out as far as I can see, and the wall winds its way across the landscape. There are tourists all around me, taking pictures and walking along the wall. I can hear people speaking in different languages, and a cool breeze is blowing through the air. The steps are steep, and the stone is worn from centuries of use. In this paragraph, you've combined everything: verbs, walking, speaking, nouns, tourists, mountains, wall, and full sentences to create a rich and complete description of the scene. By practicing this, you'll start thinking in English more naturally. Instead of just forming short sentences, you'll be able to describe things in full detail. Let's take another example. Imagine you're walking through a bustling market in Istanbul, Turkey. You might describe the scene like this. The market is filled with people, all busy shopping and bargaining with the vendors. I can smell the spices in the air, and the bright colors of the rugs and textiles catch my eye. A man is selling tea from a cart, and groups of tourists are taking photos. The sound of people talking and laughing fills the air, and the atmosphere is lively and energetic. When you practice thinking in paragraphs like this, you are training your brain to describe events and scenes in full detail without stopping to translate from your native language. This stage is essential because it helps you not only think in English but also express your thoughts in a more coherent and fluent way. By focusing on forming paragraphs, you can talk more naturally and at length, an essential skill when aiming for fluency. Now, imagine you are sitting in a cozy cafe in Amsterdam. How would you describe your surroundings? The previous one, helping you gradually develop the ability to think and speak in English fluently. Imagine you are in the Netherlands, sitting in a cozy cafe by the canal. Here's how you might describe the scene in a paragraph. I'm sitting at a small table by the window, sipping my coffee. The cafe is warm and inviting, with soft music playing in the background. Outside, I can see people riding their bicycles along the canal. The sky is cloudy, and it looks like it might rain soon. Inside, a few people are reading books, and a couple is chatting quietly over their breakfast. The smell of freshly baked bread fills the air, and the atmosphere is calm and peaceful. In this paragraph, you have combined all the elements, verbs, nouns, and full sentences to create a vivid picture of the scene. This is the final stage of thinking in English, where you can describe situations in detail, just as you would in your native language. To practice this, take a few minutes to describe your day in a paragraph. Start from the moment you woke up and think about everything that happened. What did you do? Where did you go? Who did you meet? Try to describe it all in English. For example, today was a busy day. I woke up early and went for a walk in the park. The weather was nice, and I saw a lot of people exercising. After that, I had breakfast at a small cafe. I ordered a cappuccino and a croissant. Later, I went to work and had a meeting with my team. We discussed our new project, and everyone had great ideas. In the evening, I met a friend for dinner at a restaurant. We had a great time catching up and talking about our week. This type of daily practice will not only help you think in English but also improve your ability to recall and describe events in detail. Putting it all together, achieving fluency through practice. By now, you should have a clear understanding of the 4 stages of thinking in English. 1. Think in verbs, focus on action words and describe what is happening around you. 2. Think in nouns, name the people, places, and things you see in your surroundings. 3. Think in sentences, combine verbs and nouns to form short, simple sentences. 4. Think in paragraphs. Bring everything together to create detailed descriptions of scenes and events. Each of these stages builds on the previous one, gradually training your brain to think in English naturally. The more you practice, the easier it will become, and soon, thinking in English will feel effortless. Keep practicing daily, and you will see a significant improvement in your fluency. From a magazine, website, or your own collection, and describe it in detail using English. Focus on what is happening in the picture, who is in it, what they are doing, and how the scene looks. This exercise helps train your brain to think in English and improves your ability to describe situations fluently. 3. Storytelling practice. Take a moment to recall a past event and narrate it in English. It could be something simple like your last vacation, a funny incident at work, or a memorable day with your friends. The goal is to form complete sentences and structure your thoughts in a logical sequence, making it easier to speak spontaneously. 4. Self-conversation. Talk to yourself in English about your day, your plans, or even random thoughts. You can do this out loud or in your mind. This practice helps bridge the gap between thinking and speaking, making you more comfortable expressing yourself in English. 5. Journaling. Write a short diary entry in English every day. Describe your experiences, feelings, or reflections on what happened. Writing helps reinforce your ability to think in English and improves your vocabulary and sentence structure. 6. Real-life simulations. Imagine yourself in different real-life situations, ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, or making small talk at a party. Mentally rehearse how you would respond in English. This kind of practice will prepare you for real conversations and boost your confidence. Final thoughts: keep practicing and stay consistent. Thinking in English is a skill that takes time and dedication to develop. By following the 4 stages, thinking in verbs, nouns, sentences, and paragraphs, you will gradually train your brain to process English naturally. The more you practice, the more fluent and confident you will become. Remember, fluency is not just about knowing grammar and vocabulary, it's about being able to think and express yourself effortlessly. Keep practicing daily, be patient with yourself, and most importantly, enjoy the process. Soon, thinking in English will become second nature, and you'll find yourself speaking more fluently than ever before. One effective way to train your brain to think in English is by using pictures. Find an image from a magazine, website, or your own photo album. Observe the picture closely and describe everything you see in English. For example, if you are looking at a picture of a beach, you might say, "The sand is white, and the water is crystal clear. There are a few people swimming, and some children are building a sand castle. In the distance, I can see a boat sailing on the horizon." This exercise will help you visualize and express thoughts in English naturally. Another great practice is journaling. At the end of each day, write a short journal entry in English. Start with basic descriptions of what you did that day, where you went, and who you met. As you gain confidence, try to add more details to your descriptions. Writing regularly will improve your ability to think and structure sentences in English. If you don't have anyone to practice speaking with, try talking to yourself. Pick a topic and speak about it for a few minutes. For instance, describe your favorite movie, explain how to prepare your favorite dish, or discuss your weekend plans. This exercise helps you become more comfortable thinking and speaking in English without hesitation. Setting language challenges is another useful technique. Challenge yourself to think in English for short periods throughout the day. Set a timer for 5 minutes and commit to thinking only in English during that time. Gradually increase the duration as you become more comfortable. Over time, this practice will help your brain transition into thinking in English more effortlessly. Final thoughts: the road to fluency. Learning to think in English is a journey that requires patience and consistent practice. The more you engage with the language, the more natural it will feel to think, speak, and express yourself fluently. By following the 4 stages, thinking in verbs, nouns, sentences, and paragraphs, you will build a strong foundation for fluency. Consistency is key. Practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes, and you will see improvement over time. Making mistakes is a normal part of learning, so don't be discouraged. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow. Are you ready to take the next step on your English learning journey? Start practicing today, and soon, you'll be thinking in English like a native speaker. Thank you for joining me in today's lesson on Bookish English. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming lessons. Keep practicing, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next lesson.